Hi everyone, welcome back to Mindful Moments. I'm Meg.
And I'm Molly.
And today we have a very special guest, but Molly has some information for you all first.
So last week we said that Kerrigan would be on, a fellow cancer survivor and very good friend. And unfortunately, this week she's busy because she's booked and blessed singing at a restaurant that she frequents at. So today we are very excited to welcome Dena Sherwood. Meg, you want to tell us a little bit about Dena? Oh, there she is.
There she is.
She's right.
So Dena is the founder of the Arms Wide Open Childhood Cancer Foundation, and she's also mother to two-time childhood cancer survivor Billy Sherwood and mother to Sydney Sherwood, who was Billy's sister. And she's a great singer, and we're so excited to have her on because it feels like Dena has helped, along with Mike. Shout out to Mike, who didn't want to make an appearance, but we love you anyway, Mike. She has helped put this all together, and it just felt fitting to have her on as her first guest. So it kind of all worked out perfectly.
Hi,
Hey
Dena.
guys, how are you? Thanks
Good.
for having me. Great.
Are you excited?
I am. And I have to clarify something. I don't want people to think I'm the singer, Meg. You said she's a singer, so it's not me.
Oh, I think I said Sydney. It's okay. Well, your daughter's a singer.
I'm only kidding. Because Sydney will tell you I'm a terrible singer. So
we have some. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say we have some questions. Meg, you want to jump right in?
Yep.
Sure, yeah.
Are you ready? Molly, do you want to ask the first question?
Yeah, I'll ask the first question. that was my job. All right.
Sorry.
So tell us a little bit about how you became a part of the cancer community.
Well, we're pretty much thrust into it. You know, my son was diagnosed on July 6, 2008 with stage 4 neuroblastoma. He was, sick before that, I would say, probably like the April before that, he was sick and getting sick on and off, different things, bringing him back and forth to the doctor, to the pediatrician. And, they were just giving us a variety of different things that it could be. And I just knew that it wasn't that. I knew he wasn't himself. I knew that something was wrong. My husband knew the same. And we just kept bringing him back to the pediatrician. And finally, we were away on vacation with my in-laws and my mom. We would usually take a trip to the beach with the kids down the Jersey Shore. And, we're here on the East Coast. And when we were down there, Billy was like inconsolable, so I was giving him Motrin, Tylenol on and off. And my husband was taking Sydney to the beach. I was staying back home with Billy. We were taking turns. Then I would go with Sydney, and then he would come home and stay with Billy. And, we did bring him down to the beach one day. And, it would have been his first time. He was 13 months old, so it would have been his first time on the sand. And, we tried to put him down on the sand, and he like retracted his legs and was screaming. So, crying, screaming. And so we wouldn't put him in the sand, obviously. And we were thinking like, oh, that's so weird. Maybe he doesn't like the sand, he's a little baby. And, just all these different things. So holding him on my lap, definitely not himself. We go to the pediatrician from the shore. We drive back, about 40 minutes. And I bring him to the pediatrician. I'm like, something's wrong. And they're like, oh, maybe summer cold, maybe Coxsackie, maybe a bellyache because he had too many strawberries, maybe pink eye. I mean, wide variety, weird things, right? So we brought him back to the pediatrician twice that week. He really wasn't sleeping well. He was always a happy baby. Even when he woke up, always smiling and, just such a joy. And he was just so off. So, we decided to cut our vacation short, and we were like, let's just go home. Maybe it's because he's sleeping in a pack and play and he's not used to it. Maybe it's a new house, just, he's out of sorts, never thinking cancer, right? So we cut the trip short. We go home. I'm a court reporter by trade, so I was working on a transcript that I had done, and he was sleeping. Billy was taking a nap. And my husband was in the garage, like cleaning the garage or something. I could remember it obviously vividly because I'm telling such detail. And my husband walks in, and I'm sitting at my desk, and he's like, I just feel like something is so off. He's like, I'm gonna go up there. I'm like, he said, I just went up and checked on him and I just feel like he's not breathing right. He's like, I'm so tired of them telling us that there's nothing wrong and, coming up with these crazy, excuses of what this could be or crazy, ideas of what this could be. He said, I'm going to go at that time it was a camcorder, right? He's like, I'm going to go get the camcorder and I'm going to film his breathing because I do not want, he's like, I think we should take him to the emergency room. And he's like, I do not want them telling me again that nothing is wrong because I know my son and something's wrong. So I'm like, all right, fine. So we go up and we see, his breathing is off, labor breathing and, just not right. He films him. We, get him dressed. He was in a onesie. We get him dressed and, pack him up. We pack everything up. I tell my daughter, I don't even remember what I was making for dinner that night, trim scampi, and I'm like, I tell my daughter, Mommy will be home soon. We just have to take Billy to the emergency room. It takes a long time sometimes, so it might be a few hours, but we'll be home later, and we can have dinner together. And okay, Mom. And then we left, and then we didn't come home for 32 days after that, because we went to a local emergency room. And as soon as we walked in, my husband had the camcorder in his hand. And, I said, there's something wrong with my son. And, I said, look, you can see how he's not breathing right. I lifted up his shirt and they could see that, his breathing was off. And they were like, oh, yeah, let's get him a nebulizer treatment. Maybe he has pneumonia. So right away, they give us a nebulizer treatment. They set up for an x-ray. They take him for an x-ray. They come back. They say, we want to do a CT scan. We sent the x-ray to St. Peter's, which is a children's hospital near us. And they said we should get a CT scan. They get the CT scan. The doctor comes back. She's standing at the ends of the stretcher, in the emergency room. And I'm sitting there with Billy, giving him the nebulizer treatment. And she said, Mr. and Mrs. Sherwood, we don't mean to alarm you, but your son has a mass in his chest and it's wrapped around his spinal cord. And we think it to be cancerous. And from then on, I mean, I don't know what happened, like I literally was like in shock and it was just so surreal, and I called my father-in-law because he's the most level-headed person I know, and I just love him so much. And I was like, Dad, you're never going to believe what it is, and, I guess he kind of talked me down. And then, they were transporting us. They wanted to transport us to the children's hospital because they couldn't care for him there. And we got in an ambulance and I was literally in shock. And all I can remember was asking, I guess the driver that was, not the driver, the other ambulance, the EMS tech or whatever, the ambulance tech that was there, like, is my son going to die, And I was like literally just rocking. I remember again, like in shock, just saying, is my son going to die? Is my son going to die? And, they couldn't answer that question. And so we got to St. Peter's and they put him into the PICU. One of his lungs had collapsed. And we stayed in the PICU for like 32 days without knowing if he was going to live or die. And that was, our introduction to cancer. So it was just a crazy, crazy time.
Well, thank you for sharing. I know that you said you remember it, and that's why you're saying it in such detail. And I think Meg and I can both kind of relate in a way where it's just, it never leaves you. So thank you for sharing, because I know how difficult it can be to talk about it.
Yeah, and you would think that it would be easier, being that I've been in this community for so long and I'm, I deal with, people on a daily basis of kids who, are diagnosed or in the fight or, even bereaved parents. And, it doesn't get easier. And here it is now, what is it? 13 years that he's no evidence of disease now. And it's still, to talk about it is still difficult. So I think that is really, that just shows you how much a childhood cancer diagnosis can affect you, right? And continues to affect you even when your child is a survivor, right?
Yeah. I think it's so interesting to hear from you as a parent because I don't really know if my mom has ever told me sort of what she saw, like detail by detail during that day. She's told me a little bit, but I know it's hard for her to talk about. I imagine it's probably hard for you to talk about as well. But it's such a different perspective than like what Molly and I have as far as like what we experienced. And I do feel like what you're saying, how you remember every detail leading up to it, but then after that, it's like you're kind of just, it's all just you're in shock and you go blank. Like I remember every detail up to my diagnosis and then sort of the days after that, the weeks after that, like just bits and pieces, but the hours leading up to the diagnosis I remember in very great detail. So, we have another question for you. Let me pull it up. But thank you so much for your honesty and telling Billy's
I
story.
feel like, it's so important to, raise awareness and really tell the truth about childhood cancer that I'm
Yeah,
really, thankful that you guys have me on today.
we're grateful to have you on. So, I know you told us a little bit about your introduction. Is there more you can tell us about Billy and his story? Whatever you're comfortable with.
Sure, yeah. So Billy was always that 1%, right? So he had a very, very difficult time at treatment. It kind of felt like whatever could go wrong did go wrong. You know, there were 3 times in particular that, and this one time here, actually, he went in for surgery, and his lungs, because when he was first diagnosed, he had a collapsed lung, pneumonia, kyphosis, not kyphosis, chylothorax. He had so many issues with his lungs that when he went in for surgery, when he came out, his lungs were not working. And so this picture here is Billy. They had to put him in an induced coma, and he was in the induced coma for 7 days before he could breathe again on his own. And those 7 days, boy, I'll tell you, those were long days. Um, again, just sitting there and wondering if he would ever wake up, because it wasn't a guarantee. And he was struggling so hard to breathe, and so for 7 days he was on, he was on the vent, and we just, I literally sat there 7 days, caring for him, and I couldn't even hold him. Actually, the 6th day I was finally able to hold him, because I was just heartbroken, and I'm like, can I at least hold him, and they allowed me to do that. They kind of, moved around the machines and the wires, and I was able to hold him. And then the next day, he finally was able to breathe on his own. So that was just one of the tough, days that he had. But it seemed like I said, he had a tough time. Another time, he had mouse. So he had 4 major surgeries, actually 6 major surgeries. Yeah. And major is like, I don't know, 6 to 13 hours, right? So he had 6 major surgeries, and he had chemo, and he had radiation. He had 3F8 mouse antibody, and he also had the anti-neuroblastoma vaccine. So, his first day of 3F8, they let us know, sometimes the kids will have a reaction to the pre-meds and the antibody, and some children will stop breathing, but there's only 1%. And so you never think that you'll be that 1% until you are that 1%. And Billy stopped breathing. It was his first day of the antibody treatment, and he stopped breathing, and they escorted us out of the room, and the doctors came flying in, with their cart, and probably about 8 or 9 doctors, nurses, and they're working on him, just trying to get him back to us. And thankfully, I walked out. Obviously, they asked us to leave because it was not a good scene. And, I just remember like dropping to my knees and just crying and just saying, God, how did this happen? How does this happen? Like I just couldn't believe, like, a treatment that was supposed to save his life, and now he's stopped breathing, now. And I'm like, how did this happen? And I just keep remembering, repeating that and crying, and my husband like kind of picking me up off the floor. And then finally we heard him cry, and I don't even know how long it was. It felt like an eternity, but finally we heard him cry and they got him back. And again, we couldn't go back in for a while because they were trying to make sure that he was stable and like with them, like still with them. And then finally we were able to go back in. And then you know it was just crazy because with antibody you have to go back for the rest of the week.
Mhm.
So I had to go back. That was Monday. We had to go back Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday and do it all over again. And because he had this reaction now, um, he had to do the treatment without pain meds, without being pre-medicated.
Mm.
And the agent, with neuroblastoma, it's like the nerve endings and the nerve cells. So the antibody attaches to that and is basically it's basically like a like a nerve root pain, right? Like if you could just imagine how painful that is, right? When you have, um, let's say, when you have a nerve root pain, right? I guess that's the best way to explain it. But that's from head to toe, you know, all over your body. And so it was so painful for him, and he had to do it, like I said, without any pain meds, without any pre-medication. And we went back to the Ronald McDonald's house that night, and I was like again beside myself, and he was like so beat up, Billy. And he was sleeping. I remember we were watching Up. I was watching Up. I was staring at Up. Actually, I don't even know if I was watching it. I was just staring at the screen, and I was saying to myself, like, how am I going back there tomorrow? Like, I literally wanted to just take him and run away and pretend that this was not happening. And then I was like, I said to my husband, how are we doing this? Like, I am not strong enough. How am I taking him back there? He died today. And he was like, Dena, what's the alternative? He dies tomorrow, like we have to continue this. And I was like, all right, I have to suck it up and I just have to do the best I can to support him and to get through this. And we went back the next day and we went back the rest of the week. And we went back for 3 more rounds after that, which are week rounds. And he did it without pain medicine. And it was horrific. And it was so, it was literally, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I wouldn't wish it on, an animal, like literally, like that's it. It was just horrific to watch him go through that. His heart rate would just skyrocket, and he would be vomiting and going to the bathroom at the same time, and his veins were popping out of his head, and he was it was just unbelievable, just screaming in pain. And we had to do it, and we did it. And so it's at one point his he hamid, which is human antibody against mouse antibody. It kind of you get to a plateau when you hammer. And it's not a good thing because that means your child can't have any more antibody. So of course my husband was beside himself, and he was like, what are we going to do now? And I was relieved, honestly, because I, like, for myself, I couldn't even take this anymore. Like the stress of this was killing me, because he was, like I said, screaming in pain. And it was just so much to handle. And I was just trying to, I would almost kind of like put him in a meditative state just by repeating the same thing over and over again. Like, you're doing a great job, buddy. Mommy's so proud of you. You're going to get through this. It's going to be okay. And I just kept repeating literally the same thing over and over again. And I would almost put him in a trance. It was like so odd, but that's what happened. And I would just like lay behind him, or he would, if he was in so much pain where he felt like he needed to stand, he would stand between my legs and I would just hold him and just keep repeating the same thing over and over again. Um, so PS, he gets, he hammers and they tell us, okay, guys, he's not eligible for any more antibody. And, but we have rituximab, which is a rabbit antibody, and that can bring down the hammer level. So, okay, we are like, all right, let's try this. My husband was happy because he was like, oh, good, maybe he can get more because more was better at the time. Um, and we bring him in and, they get the infusion ready and they say, okay, the first 8 minutes, kids can have a reaction to it. But after 8 minutes, if there's no reaction, then they should be good to go. Okay, great. So we're all standing there, like I'm with him, laying with him. My husband's standing there, 3 doctors, a nurse standing there, watching the infusion go in for 8 minutes, literally just standing there for 8 minutes, right? Just waiting. And 8 minutes pass. Okay, guys, you're good. And they leave the room. And my husband says, I'm going to run to the men's room. And I'm like, okay, no problem. Got this. He's doing good. He's sleeping. Um, and the next thing you know, he winds up, he's having a seizure. He winds up seizing. And now I'm on the bed. I'm trying to get up for the button. The button is not working. I'm screaming, somebody help us. And, everybody comes running back in again. And they're shutting the infusion, they're flushing it, and he wound up being catatonic for like 6 hours. And like I'm in front of his face, like, Billy, it's mommy, do you see me, baby? It's mommy, can you hear me? And nothing, just blank, catatonic. And so we had to stay there. We stayed there for about 8 hours. And then he finally, and again, at that point, they're telling us, he could have brain damage at this point, and he may not be able to hear me, or, we may not be able to get through. They're telling us all the possibilities. And then finally, he comes out of it, and, then we drive home, it's like so surreal, right? And then we're driving home and I'm just staring at him the whole ride home. My husband's driving and I'm just sitting there, like staring at him, like, what the F just happened, again. So after that, since he hammered and since he had an allergic reaction to the rituximab, um, he was then eligible for the anti-neuroblastoma vaccine because there were no other options for him at the time. So back then, in order to get the anti-neuroblastoma vaccine, was you had to have relapsed twice, and Billy had only relapsed once, so he wasn't eligible. But because there were no other options, they gave it to him. And for me, I am a huge believer in God's will, and just I don't know. I just knew that at that point, like, even though I went through all that horrific trauma, and my son went through, my husband, my daughter, that was the path that had to be in order for us to get to where we had to be, because he would have never been eligible for that. And maybe that is what saved his life today. I don't know, but I do know that I think he was the 13th patient on that. And he and out of that, I think there were 15. That was like the first 15. That was the first group of kids. And all of those kids that were on it, there's only one that didn't survive. And that child had had a lot of disease. So they weren't no evidence of disease, but they which the other children were. So I think back and I say, like I look at it, and my husband was so distraught, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, we can't get any more we can't get any more 3F8," and I was relieved. And then, again, another crazy thing happens, and then we are able to get on this trial. So I was just like, I don't know, I just felt like it was like divine intervention almost to get us where God knew that He needed to be. Um, and yeah, so then um, after that, at that point, um, he had a left abdothoracotomy, right abdothoracotomy, laminectomy, and a laminotomy, and his spine was degenerating. So he had severe kyphosis and scoliosis, where his back he was like a hunchback.
Mhm.
Um, and the degree was worsening, and they said that if it continued, it would collapse his lungs and he would die. So at that point, once he was finally considered no evidence of disease, um, cancer free, um, at that point, we were able to then move on and correct the spine, because obviously they wouldn't correct the spine until they knew he was cancer free, right? So he was walking around like this. Um, and but we had to get him to a place where he could have the surgery. So then, um, once that happened, he had to have a halo surgery, where he had the bolts screwed into his skull in 4 places. And he was in traction for 23 hours a day. And at that point, he was 5. Um, so that was, I mean, my gosh, you know, was such a good kid, and so patient, and like I could never imagine a 5-year-old sitting there in traction for 23 hours, and he like took it like a champ, like I guess because it was his life, and he had been in the hospital since he was 13 months old. So that's all he really knew. And he was just so, such a good boy. Of course we had crafts and games, and but he was like the best kid ever, going through that, I remember. And, so he was in traction 23 hours a day. So if he was in his bed, there was traction in the bed. And of course, the traction is attached to the head. And the whole purpose of it was to extend his spine, because it was curved so badly that if it would straighten it out, the doctor was trying to straighten it out as much as he could. And if he could do that, he could get the best correction, and was hoping to correct the spine, and it worked, thank God. But that was also tough, because he was in traction for 3 weeks, uh, 23 hours a day. He was only allowed to come out of the traction to eat. If he wanted to, wheel around the hospital floor in the wheelchair, he was in traction. If he they also had a walker for him, and if he wanted to walk, he can walk, but he was also in traction while he was walking. Um so after that, he was finally able to have the surgery, and so he had surgery to put rods, on either side of his spine. He has cobalt rods in his spine, and now he is corrected. um, After effects of cancer, he's got high frequency hearing loss. He has restrictive lung disease because he had pneumonia, collapsed lung so many times, chest tubes, probably about, I don't know, 8, 10 chest tubes, for issues. So he has restrictive lung disease. He has like, I don't know, like 58% capacity, the normal person. Um, and you know, uh, Something that bothers him today, short stature, that's from the chemo, and also from the radiation to his spine, and because he had disease in the spine. And, just, I guess I mean, he has, like I said, late effects, but um, obviously, we're thankful for the late effects that he has, because he's not in a wheelchair, and he is able to have a good quality of life, and able to do most things. There are some things that he wants to do and some things that he can't do. And, that's very upsetting for him. It makes him sad and angry. Um, because, one of them was joining the army. He wanted to go into the service and serve his country, and he's not able to. And that's upsetting to him. Um, you know, Another thing, scuba diving. He wanted to go scuba diving and experience that, and he can't. And he's like, I don't care, I want to do it anyway. And I'm like, you can't because you'll die. Like, I mean, it's that severe, right? And you know, so again, life as a survivor. I really, my heart is with you guys because I know I deal with it every day, and although we are cancer free, we live with cancer every single day since the diagnosis, and I'm afraid we will continue to for the rest of our lives, right? So
Well, it's terrible. It's so sad to hear all of that, and it just, it sucks. There's nothing else to say other than that. It sucks so bad, and such a young child, and like you said, like such a good kid. Not that it shouldn't happen to anybody, but it's also really hard when it happens to the best kids. Like, I've seen so many really good people get sick, and it blows. It sucks so bad. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but something that I really admire with you is that you watched Billy go through all of these terrible things, and you still immerse yourself in the cancer community for the betterment of other people. Like, Meg and I talk about this all the time. Like, sometimes we just debrief after this, and or just like and on any day, and we're just like, it's so hard to just always talk about cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And you have done so many great things in the cancer community, and you're just surrounded by it, and I really admire you for that, because I don't think a lot of people know the details of what Billy's gone through and what your family went through, and to still do what you do and help others while sometimes having to relive that trauma is really incredible. So thank you for doing that.
well, thank you, but if we can help one person, like, that's what we want to do, just kind of help those that come behind us. And that was always the premise of the foundation,
Mm-hmm.
because as you're going through it, there's always someone that has it worse than you, right? um, and you see it, and you realize it, and you want to make it better, for the people that are hurting. I think, one thing that childhood cancer diagnosis has done, and I know it has for our entire family, is changed our hearts, changed our perspective,
Mm-hmm.
changed our priorities. It has given us an immense um, gratitude for life, right?
Mm-hmm.
We try to spend as much time as we can outdoors. So we spent about 4.5 years in the hospital. So we love to spend time together and outdoors. But it really has given us such a gratitude for life, and just, you know, a strength. Um, it strengthened our family, and it strengthened our bond. My husband and I have a great marriage, a great relationship. And marriages, this childhood cancer, it either makes or breaks you. The stress is so immense. So thank God we were able to come through it together, and to lift each other up when the other was, so distraught, and just to be able to be there for each other. And then Sydney also struggled, and she's very vocal about it. She struggled with an eating disorder very early on in his diagnosis, because she was afraid to throw up. because she would see him vomiting so much. She was like 6.5 when he was diagnosed, and we would always be in the hospital. So, um, she was home by herself, and she would be afraid to throw up. She was afraid she was going to throw up. And what if I get sick? And who's going to help me? Mommy's not here. Who's going to help me? And although my mother-in-law and father-in-law and my mom would be with her, it just wasn't the same as having, your parents with you. So, you know, we, you know, we really, it really has strengthened our bond and our relationship as a family, and it has strengthened our faith. And, it's not that my faith is strong because my son lived, and I like made a bargain with God. It's not like that at all. It is that, when my son was going through this, and as I said, he had such terrible times, the 3 times that were so horrific that we thought, one time we did lose him and they brought him back, and 2 times we thought we were going to lose him and he came back. And, but in the very beginning of it all, you know, I just said, God, he was your son before he was mine. And whatever we face, because nothing was guaranteed, right? I said, whatever we face, he had a 30% chance of survival. I said, I can't do this alone. Please, whatever it is, whatever, his fate is, please just help us get through this and help us, get through life. And then, you know, of course, I'm thankful that he survived, but it wasn't like, oh, I'm so faithful because my son, lived, because I know the most faithful people who are, even more faithful than our family, and their child died, and many of them, and many were good friends, and many we were there when their child took their last breath. And, it wasn't because, you know, they didn't pray hard enough or they didn't have enough faith, because their faith, was the strongest of all. But, you know, I think there are some, answers on earth that we'll never get. And there are no good answers on earth of why children get cancer and why children die of cancer after fighting so hard. Nothing that satisfies me. But I do know that, because of our faith, I know that this isn't all there is, right? And there is more. And we're here just for a short time. And, something that consoles me, and the reason why I think I'm sane, if you could ask my family if I'm sane, they'll probably say no. But the reason why I think I'm sane is because I know that we have the promise of eternal life together in heaven. And I know that no matter which one of the four of us goes first, we'll all be reunited at one time. And that consoles me, you know. Um, yeah, and just another thing too, like the foundation, Arms Wide Open, was founded on faith, Um, I can remember coming home, and I came home to take a shower and to see Sydney, because we were in the PICU for 32 days, and I didn't leave the whole time. When he was in the PICU, but he was still in the hospital right after that, because once he got out and once they got him stable, then he started chemo right away. So we were in the hospital for a long time. Um, and I remember coming home, and I remember standing in my kitchen, and I remember saying, God, like, if this is what you have for us, like, if this is the cross we're to bear, like, show me what you want me to do with it, because this can't be it. Like, I can't believe that this is just it. There has to be more to this. Give me wisdom, give me guidance, and, show me what to do with this, and really that's how Arms Wide Open started. And, that's how it continues, and that's how it sustains, really. So,
Well, I know you're our first guest, and I just feel there's not really a lot of words after hearing all of that, but I will say that I hope, if it only reaches one person, I hope that it reaches many people, though, because what you just told us, like, as Molly has said in past weeks, everyone's story is so different and unique to them. But what you just told us is an accurate representation of what childhood cancer really is. And I think that can be lost on people sometimes I mean, before I was diagnosed, all I knew about childhood cancer was St. Jude and their commercials. I'm not knocking them at all. I think they do great work. But I didn't really know what it was. I'm glad I didn't because I was a kid. Like, I didn't need to know that. I mean, some awareness would have been good. I think your kids can be aware of this, just sort of not go too deep into it because it is scary and it's a lot. Um, but that was all I knew. And I think some people, even in their 30s, 40s, 50s, like, still that's all they know. And so I hope that somebody's watching this right now or will watch this later that just heard all of that and has a better understanding of what it's like for a child, like Billy was a child, to fight cancer and to go through all of that and to hear your story as like a parent, how it affected you. I mean, we can see how it's affected you tonight, just through your words and your emotion. And I just, I think I didn't know his whole story, and I just admire you more than I ever did before, and love you even more. Not didn't know that was
Thank
possible,
you.
but um, we're just like really proud of you, and I'm grateful you came on, and I just um, feel like this is going to be important for somebody to hear. So I hope anybody that's listening feels like empowered to help us change the reality. Because what you said was Billy was like the 13th child, and there was only like 15 kids at the time or now that had the vaccine.
Oh no, now there's so many more. Yeah, now there's so many more.
Well, that just shows you how outdated and how limited there were, how there was very limited options for you guys back then. That's only 13 years ago, you said, um, which is just wild.
I'll tell you something really, really amazing. You know, as I said, Billy had 30% chance of survival, and as a foundation, we started to raise funds right really quick because we realized that there were not many options. Right, it was the archaic chemo, toxic chemo, radiation, tailored to their little bodies, right? The same that adults would get. Surgery was a form of treatment because you're, getting rid of the cancer. No one would think that, but surgery is a part of treatment. Um, and so we started to raise funds really early on, and we came together with like five um, other family-run foundations of neuroblastoma patients at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and we wound up fully funding humanized antibody treatment and the anti-neuroblastoma vaccine. And those two in combination today now have a survival rate for children treated at Memorial Sloan Kettering that is about 65 to 70%.
Um,
So yeah, so I mean that to me, I still get the chills talking saying that because what a blessing. And now the treatment is available all over the world now, and we were blessed enough to be able to play a part in that to help other families and other children. And to me, man, like to know that kids are living um, because of that just means so much to me.
yeah,
That's
you guys
incredible.
have done amazing work. I'm really honored to know you all. Well, I know you touched on this a little bit, but I was wondering if you would be willing to talk about it a little bit more. How was balancing cancer treatment and also parenting like for you?
Um, I don't think it was hard because I'm a present parent, to begin with. I just love my kids so much.
Mhm.
Um, and so it wasn't difficult. And, I think, I don't remember who. I heard somebody talking about, I think last week somebody asked a question and said about, their kid, letting their kid get away with stuff or
Yeah.
reprimanding them. And I literally always reprimanded my son. He got away with nothing. When he was sick, of course, I was caring for him, but I was like, this kid, if he lives, he's not going to be a brat, and think he could get whatever he wants. So I disciplined him, and he knew, he didn't get away with everything just because he had cancer. He didn't get whatever he wanted just because he had cancer. He didn't win all the fights with his sister just because he had cancer. I was like, if this kid survives, he's going to be a good boy, and he's not going to be this little brat running around that thinks because he had cancer, he should get whatever he wants. And it's funny because even to this day, um, just a funny thing, running during COVID, Sydney comes to every treatment, every appointment with him, even to this day. Wherever she's doing, whatever she's doing, she always comes to his appointments. She's his, like, she is his support system, right? So during COVID, of course, only one person could go into the hospital. So Sydney's like, I'll come, whatever. She sat in the driver's seat, but then I went up with him. So she was like, well, what should I do? Just drive around? And I'm like, no, just stay here. I'm like, just stay here. If the police come, just tell them that your brother is in Memorial Sloan Kettering. He's a cancer patient, a cancer survivor, and he has an appointment. And Billy's like, don't let her play the cancer card. That's ridiculous. And I'm like, Billy, we're not playing the cancer card. Like, this is the reality. You are a cancer survivor and you are going in there. So he's even so, like, he'll never like take anything or want anything, and he was always like that, even like as a little boy, like I know a lot of the families would get things, right? And he was not like that. He wanted nothing, because he was a cancer patient, but he just wanted to live, basically. That's all he wanted. So it was funny because, I was in the background watching last week and I was like, I wish I could tell that mother, don't give in. Like, you have to discipline, and it's hard. It is hard to do that, but it's important and necessary. Of course, they get so much love, my kids too. It's not like it's all discipline. We are so close. Both of my kids tell me everything and anything and come to me for advice and opinion, and want to do things with me still, which is fun. We all still go on vacation together, which is beautiful. Sydney's 22 and she still wants to go to every family vacation. So it wasn't too hard. The one thing that did, I guess, bother me, and the one thing that made me sad was being separated from Sydney so much. That was a big thing because I knew that she was struggling emotionally and I couldn't be there. As a parent, Billy wasn't more important because he had cancer. Billy just needed me more at the time because he could potentially die, right? So I needed to tend to his needs first, right? But Sydney was always in my mind and on my heart. And I was always, checking in with her. And, there was a time where she was struggling so much. It was the second grade where we took her out of school and she came and lived at the Ronald McDonald House because it was weighing on her so, so terribly. And I was like, I could care less about school at this point. Like, my daughter's emotional well-being is what matters. And it's like, she was so smart, and it didn't even matter in the long run. But so many people are so caught up in things that don't even matter that they don't even realize. So parenting wasn't hard for me at all to balance it, but it was difficult for me as a mom because Sydney was equally as important, and I cared for her well-being so much, and it was just heartbreaking to not be able to comfort her and be there for her when she needed me because I had to be in the hospital. That was tough. That was tough for me. That's the only thing that I would say was tough.
I know my parents struggled with a lot too, and I think I see that in a lot of parents, just feeling like they have to split their time between their kids, and it's not something that I understand fully because I'm not a parent, obviously. um, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel so strongly everything I've been through, and it feels like, well, you guys don't get it, which they won't. Nobody will, my family won't ever get my personal experience with it. But I will admit that sometimes I forget that it happened to all of us, like all of us.
Yes.
That's not I'm not saying I'm selfish in that way. I'm just saying I was the one who went through it firsthand, and that I feel so strongly, but it affected my dad and my mom, and I know how it affects my brother, even though he doesn't talk about it much. Yeah.
Yeah, it affects the whole family. You know, my husband and I both have PTSD.
Mhm.
Sydney, anxiety. Like I said, she had an eating disorder first. Thank God that's not an issue really anymore. Um, uh, Anxiety, depression, she
Yeah.
battles with that. And, as you said, she sings, right? So, um, I think
A great singer.
that's her gift, though. I feel like
Mhm.
that was her gift from God because, I would pray and I would say, God, be with her and comfort her while I can't be, right? Please, like, bring her peace. And she wound up teaching herself, to play guitar and singing. And she would sing worship music to calm herself down when she was having panic attacks. So I really feel like, God gave her that gift to get through the time that she was away from us. And because we were away so much, like I said, he was in the hospital a lot, like months at a time. And she used that to help her. And today still, I mean, she's written, I don't know, she has like 3 albums. She writes songs all the time. She's always singing. She loves it. It's just such an outlet for her, and I'm just so thankful, that God blessed her with that gift to help her when I couldn't be there.
Yeah,
Well,
I think like Meg said, like something that I really appreciate from hearing you talk is just I just appreciate my family so much more. I mean, like I of course I appreciate my mom and my sisters. They're my best friends and they were the ones that got me through what I was going through, but it's just so interesting to hear from someone who has also been through something but it's not directly related to you. It's like you can take yourself out of it and just listen and not have like the
yeah.
what about me feelings. It's like, oh, well what about them? And like Meg was saying, I when I was sick, when I was really sick, I remember I would get in fights with my sisters and I'd be like, well, it's happening to me, it's not happening to you. And I learned very quickly that like that was so inappropriate for me to say. I think I was just so like amped up on I'm going through treatment, I'm having surgery, I'm missing out on this, me. And um, it's just as I removed myself a little bit more and grew up and just became more mature, knowing that my sisters had to see me sick and hearing you talk about Billy and Sydney and knowing that my family went through that too and in their own way, it just makes you appreciate your support system
Yeah.
a lot more. Yeah.
I I just I just can't imagine what my parents had to do. And I know some like they would help me go to the bathroom, they'd help me shower, they would change the sheets, they'd change my clothes, and I was 13, 14, 15 at the time. Like that's not normal for a teenager, but I was so sick that they had to do all of those things.
Of course they did. Yeah.
Like and they did it willingly.
Mhm.
And that's what's so amazing and powerful about medical parents. And just hearing you recite like everything that Billy went through, like you know all the terms perfectly. And I don't think, do you have a medical background or just cancer
No,
mom? No,
no,
it's wild to me how much we learn through all of this. Like I might as well be a nurse. Like I feel like
exactly.
I could put my own IV in me if I wanted to. I don't want to, but uh,
Mommy,
I
I
just
cannot.
yeah. I don't think I could, but I feel like I could learn quickly because I've seen people do it so many times. But yeah, I know we have like 8 more minutes and we have one more question for you.
Okay.
So we wanted to do like a surprise question. We're trying to think of something fun to ask you after all of that. No, but we want to know how CureFest came to be because I just think it's such a powerful, moving thing that I would go to CureFest because I live in DC, right? So outside of DC, and I would go just to see our friends who we knew through the hospital and to meet up with them and see the other tables on the mall. And then the last 2 years I've gone because I've connected with people all over the country and been able to meet them, and that's been like a different experience. But before now, I know the people who are behind CureFest much better, like because I didn't know you guys at all back 6, 7, 8 years ago. Like it's just wild, and I just really want to know how this came to be.
Okay.
Before you talk about how it came to be, for the people watching who don't know what it is, will you also
Yeah.
explain what it is? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Um, so, um, CureFest is an event that is that we put on for the entire childhood cancer community, and um, you know the premise behind it is for unity, for collaboration, for to foster unity, collaboration, relationships, um, to spread awareness, to make childhood cancer a national priority, to give children with cancer and their parents and their families a voice, to hear from our, researchers, doctors, to get the our elected leaders to recognize that there is an issue, and that we need their help and support. So it's a weekend event. It has become, an event now that's surrounded by other events. Like I think now it's starting on Wednesday with Annette Leslie from the Carson Leslie Foundation does the Golden Toast with Michael McCall, um, Congressman McCall, and then it'll wrap up on Sunday with Cure Fest on the National Mall.
Mm-hmm.
So how it began, and I'll be as quick as I can. I met Donna Carmichael, who became a very dear friend. She passed away from Lou Gehrig's disease just recently, actually. Um, I met her. We had an event, Roll for the Gold, and it was a egg roll around Easter time across from the White House. So we had a very small event, and Donna was there. She was a huge advocate, amazing, so smart, so like involved. She lost her grandson Declan to cancer, and that's how she was involved. She had a foundation, Journey for a Cure. So she said to me, we did this event, and this is so great, and you're bringing people together. And mind you, at that time there's probably about 10 foundations and maybe like 50 people. Okay. And she's like, this is so great, your idea to bring people together. And we tried to do that. We had an event, Journey for a Cure Fest, I think it was. And she said, but not many people came, and it wasn't well attended. And um you know, do you think you can help? Like, would you take this on, as something that you would do and put your time and energy into? And I loved her. And I said, absolutely. I said, I would love to do that. Um, let's work on it. And that's, basically how it began. And, Meg, you probably didn't know who was behind it, because that was the design, because and people should know that CureFest is not a fundraiser, right? So we don't make a penny from CureFest. Whatever we raise sponsorships goes into the event, and there's nothing left at the end of the day. And usually Arms Wide Open is putting in anywhere from 20 to 80,000 into CureFest. So and I say that because money, I think, divides our community, right? Like everyone thinks like these are our donors, and they don't want to mix that. And so I said, it is not a fundraiser. I think Donna started, and I think it was like a fee, maybe a $35 fee, entrance fee. I said, no, this is not going to be a fundraiser, because then people will not get behind it, because they're going to think that this is something for Arms Wide Open, and it's not for everyone. I want this to unify the childhood cancer community, not to divide it. So again, we put it on, for free. We put our time and energy into it, literally like 9 months out of the year, working and planning on it. And, today, I mean, you guys know there's, probably represented like 200, 250 foundations represented. Um, uh, you know, It's a 3-day event. So many people, have collaborated. So many friendships have been formed, right? So many bonds. So much legislation has come out of it because by working together and by coming together as a group, we're stronger, right? And I think, taking that aspect out of it, as I was saying, Meg, like you probably didn't know who was behind it because we didn't have our logo like Cure Fest by Arms Wide Open. It was by design that we did that because we wanted everyone to come
Yeah.
together and bring their individuality as foundations, but to come together so we could work together as one community, the childhood cancer community. Um, that's how it started and it continues today. And, you know, um, gosh, we've had, people from all over the world come and attend. Really, we've had people from South Africa, from Australia, from Canada, um, you know, and that's in person, and I'm sure other countries as well. But aside from that, there are people that are doing the events, Cure Fest events all over the world and throughout the country at the same time that it's going on for those that can't make it to the DC area.
Yeah. Well, we thank you so much, Dena, for your time and your incredible story and just all the work that you're doing. And we want to say we'll see you next time. And make sure to tell your friends and family about our podcast. You can watch live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays on Facebook or YouTube on the Truth 365. And Molly, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, so thank you again, Dena, for being here. Your resilience and your storytelling and I think passion really just flows through you as a human being, and it's refreshing to hear how honest you are and raw and emotional. I think it's helpful to hear those stories. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And like Meg said, 7:30 every Wednesday, and you can watch on YouTube afterwards. And next week, we are so excited to be welcoming Kerrigan. She is amazing. She's an osteosarcoma cancer warrior, and she is bubbly and brilliant and beautiful, and we can't wait for you guys to meet her. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye, Dena. Thank you.
Bye, Meg.
You guys.
Too. Bye.